The sound of the front door slamming jolted me awake. I blinked rapidly, disoriented from my deep slumber after a 12-hour night shift at the hospital. "Juliana!" My husband Derek's voice bellowed through the house. "Where are you?" I glanced at the clock on my nightstand. It was only 7:30 a.m. Derek wasn't supposed to be home for at least another hour. I dragged myself out of bed, my exhausted body protesting. As I shuffled into the kitchen, I saw Derek standing there, his face red with anger. "Why the hell isn't my breakfast ready?" he snapped. "Do I have to remind you every damn day?" I took a deep breath, trying to restrain my rising irritation. "I'm sorry, I just got home from working all night," I replied evenly. "Let me get started on it now." Derek slammed his fist on the counter. "That's your problem, Juliana. You're so busy with your precious job that you've completely neglected your duties as a wife." His words felt like a slap across my face. I'd been working night shifts for years to help support us financially, while Derek worked a standard 9-to-5 job. And on my days off, I still maintained our home as best I could. "That's not fair," I said quietly, my simmering anger starting to boil over. "I work hard to contribute to this household, too. You have no idea how exhausting my shifts at the hospital can be." Derek stepped toward me, his eyes blazing. "I don't want to hear your lame excuses. A real wife would manage both roles without complaint." The contempt in his voice was the final straw. I met his glare and said in a low, steady voice, "If you can't even appreciate what I do for this family, maybe you shouldn't have a wife at all." Derek looked stunned, clearly not expecting me to stand up for myself. Then his expression twisted into an ugly sneer. "Maybe I shouldn't," he said coldly. His words hung heavily in the tense silence between us. I realized in that moment that our marriage had shattered beyond repair. The man standing before me now was a stranger, someone I no longer knew. I turned my back on him and walked away, emotions churning inside me. I felt shaken, yet resolute. After years of quietly enduring his disrespect, I was determined not to be silenced or intimidated any longer. A plan began formulating in my mind. I would get to the bottom of what had changed Derek into this angry, unreasonable person. And I would find a way out, refusing to remain trapped in a marriage that had warped into unrecognizable misery. As I readied myself for bed, I pictured the morning sun rising over the horizon, carrying the promise of a new beginning. I just had to be strong enough to seize it. Over the next few days, I maintained an icy civility around Derek, interacting only when necessary. My mind kept returning to our last explosive argument. His overreaction had been a giant red flag that something wasn't right. I was determined to get to the bottom of it. One morning before my shift, I sat down at our home desktop computer and accessed our joint checking account. As I scrolled through the recent transactions, my eyes widened in disbelief. There were numerous large ATM withdrawals from casinos in the area. On certain days, thousands of dollars had been drained from our account. My hands started shaking in anger. All this time, while I was working myself to exhaustion, Derek had secretly been gambling away our hard-earned savings. No wonder he was constantly on edge. His addiction was destroying us financially. I printed out the bank statements, highlighting the questionable withdrawals. Just then, I heard Derek's car pull into the driveway. I took a deep breath, preparing for the confrontation ahead. When Derek walked into the house, I wordlessly slid the printed pages across the counter toward him. He glanced down, and his face instantly drained of color. "What the hell is this, Derek?" I demanded. He fidgeted nervously under my glare. "It's not as bad as it looks. I've got it under control." "Under control?" I snapped. "You've been lying to me for months. How much of our money have you lost?" Derek's eyes flashed with anger. "So I play a little poker now and then. It's none of your business what I do in my free time." I let out a harsh laugh. "It absolutely is my business when you're wasting our livelihood. I work so damn hard and you just throw it away on gambling." "Don't get dramatic," he scoffed. "This isn't just your money, remember?" His dismissive words fueled the raging fire within me. "You're right, this is our money that you are losing, and I'm not going to let you drag us into financial ruin." Derek crossed his arms defiantly. "Back off, Juliana. I'm handling it." I shook my head in disgust at his denial and dishonesty. This wasn't the man I had married. That man was gone, consumed by his gambling addiction. I realized in that moment that I had only one choice: to walk away before he destroyed us both completely. I left the house that day with a renewed sense of purpose. Derek assumed I was oblivious, but I was carefully gathering evidence of his deceit. I contacted our bank and changed all the account passwords, securing my access. When Derek came home that night, I pretended nothing was amiss. But behind my placid exterior, the wheels were turning. I would catch Derek off guard when the moment was right. His web of lies was unraveling fast, and I would be the one holding the threads. Justice would be served. Over the next few weeks, I continued monitoring our bank account statements and credit card bills. The evidence was damning. Derek was draining our accounts at an alarming rate. We were drowning in debt from all his reckless gambling. One evening, Derek came home later than usual. I waited silently at the dining table, the stacks of bank statements spread out before me. When Derek walked in, I kept my voice steady. "We need to talk." He halted when he saw the papers, then quickly put on an innocent face. "What's all this?" I held up a credit card bill, pointing at a recent $5,000 cash advance. "Let's start with this. Care to explain?" Derek shrugged casually. "Just needed some extra cash on hand. Don't worry about it." My anger boiled over. I slammed my hand on the table, making him jump. "Don't worry about it. Your gambling is bleeding us dry. I want the truth, Derek. Now." His mask of innocence slipped, revealing a hint of panic. He started gathering up the papers, avoiding my eyes. "I told you I have it under control. Drop it already." I grabbed his arm forcefully. "Stop lying. Your secrets are drowning us," I shouted. He tried to pull away, but I held on tight, refusing to be dismissed again. We struggled, knocking several chairs over with loud crashes. Finally, Derek wrenched free, breathing hard. His eyes were wild, his voice rising to a shout. "Damn it! Get off my case! It's none of your damn business! I earned this money, and I'll spend it how I want." His confession stunned me into silence. All our years together dissolved in that instant. This aggressive, selfish man was a stranger to me now. When I spoke again, my voice was eerily calm. "It became my business when you made vows to share your life with me, but it's clear you care only about yourself now." Derek scowled. "Don't try and guilt-trip me. I'm so sick of your nagging and drama." I stacked the papers neatly and met his glare. "I want full access to all our accounts, effective immediately. No more secrets, Derek," he sneered. "And if I say no, then I walk out that door and never come back. Your choice." I meant every word. Derek's face clouded with disbelief, then just as quickly hardened with defiance. "You don't have the guts," he challenged. But as he stared into my unwavering eyes, I saw doubt flicker across his expression. I had finally regained my power. Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving him alone with the damning evidence scattered on the table. My path was clear now. I would seek justice one way or another. Derek had no idea what storm he had brought upon himself, but he would soon find out. Over the next few days, I went through the motions of my daily routine, pretending that everything was normal, but my mind was focused solely on implementing the exit strategy I had carefully devised. I gathered every shred of evidence I could find of Derek's financial deceit. Bank statements, credit card bills, shady emails. I printed and photocopied them, building an airtight case. At work, I requested a change to my direct deposit so my paychecks would go into a new personal account rather than our joint one. Derek was oblivious, believing I had accepted his lies once again. One night, I waited until Derek was asleep, then quietly packed a suitcase and stashed it in my car along with the evidence binder. My body hummed with nervous anticipation, but my resolve was steel. The next evening, I cooked Derek's favorite dinner, opening a nice bottle of wine. I had to get him drunk enough that he wouldn't wake when I made my escape tonight. "Special occasion?" Derek asked with a smug smile, eyeing the spread. I hid my disgust at his false charm. "Just felt like spoiling you," I lied smoothly. As we ate, I made sure his wine glass stayed full. With every sip, my freedom edged closer. "You know, you worry too much," he slurred, refilling his glass. "Everything's going to work out fine." "I'm sure you're right," I said, placating him. Soon his head drooped and his eyes closed. My moment had arrived. I withdrew everything from our joint accounts, leaving only $1 behind, a symbolic middle finger to Derek's financial abuse. Then I deleted all the account apps from his phone. He'd have a rude awakening tomorrow. With my car packed, I left my house key and wedding ring on the counter. But before walking out the door, I had one last damning piece of evidence to deliver. I slipped a letter addressed to Derek's family and employer in the mailbox. It contained a detailed timeline of Derek's gambling addiction and financial deceit. No more secrecy. His loved ones deserved to know the truth. As I pulled out of the driveway, leaving behind 15 years of lies and mistreatment, I finally breathed free. Derek had underestimated me, but that was his downfall. He never thought I'd go through with leaving him. But I was no longer the timid, compliant woman he had manipulated for years. Too long I had believed I was trapped, that this was just my fate. No more. I embraced my newfound strength, leaving Derek to face the mess he had created. With my new account flush with rightfully claimed funds, the possibilities awaiting me felt endless. Justice had been served, but more importantly, I had taken back my life, and I had never felt more powerful. I drove through the night, fueled by adrenaline and visions of the new life awaiting me. Derek's web of deceit had trapped me for too long, but now I had finally broken free. As dawn broke, I stopped at a roadside motel to catch some sleep before continuing my journey. I needed to put considerable distance between Derek and I before he realized I was gone. I had planned my exit strategically. My destination was a town several states over, close to the hospital that had recently hired me. I would be safe there, anonymous and untraceable. Before leaving the motel the next morning, I opened my laptop and logged into our joint account. As expected, all the money was gone. Derek had discovered my theft and frantically tried to cover his debts, but it was too late. I smiled in satisfaction as I pictured his panicked rage. I had left no trail for Derek to follow. With my paychecks and rightful share of savings secured, he couldn't touch me anymore. His family and employer would soon know the truth about his deceit. Let him deal with the wreckage he created. Finally, I called the one person who deserved an explanation. My older sister, Rose. She answered on the first ring. "Oh my God, Juliana, where are you? Derek is going ballistic." Her concerned voice immediately calmed my lingering worries. I knew Rose would understand. "Rose, I left him. I'm safe now, but I can't tell you where I'm headed quite yet. I needed to escape his lies and gambling addiction, but I have proof of everything. Can you make sure Mom and Dad know the full story?" Rose sighed heavily. "Thank God you got away from him. We suspected something was wrong, but you always made excuses. I'm so sorry we didn't intervene sooner. I'll explain everything to Mom and Dad. Don't worry. Just please call once you're settled so we know you're okay." Her unwavering support filled me with overwhelming relief. I had allies on my side. "I promise I'll call soon. Thank you for understanding, Rose. I love you." As I hung up, confident that word of Derek's deceit would spread, I turned my sights to the future. I had broken free from his manipulation for good. I arrived at my new apartment several days later. It was small and simple, but bright and airy. I stood at the window overlooking the bustling street below and breathed deeply. No more stifling secrecy or crippling fear. This was my fresh start. I unpacked the few belongings I had brought, my clothes, my nursing credentials, the evidence binder. For the first time in years, I was finally home. That night, as I crawled into my new bed, the setting sun cast a warm glow over my new home. I had stepped into the light, closing Derek's dark chapter behind me forever. Justice had been served. Now my life was mine again. Over the next few weeks, I settled into my new job and life, finally feeling at peace. Meanwhile, back home, the fallout of my disappearance was in full swing. Through conversations with Rose, I learned how my absence had ignited chaos for Derek. He had scrambled desperately to explain the missing money, making pathetic excuses about a home renovation and medical bills. But the detailed timeline I mailed exposed his web of lies. His employer called him into headquarters, livid about the gambling addiction and debts that had compromised Derek's judgment. The day my letter arrived, Derek's phone blew up with concerned calls from his family, demanding answers, but he had none, only more lies to cover his deceit. He begged my family not to turn against him. At first, my mother tried to calm the uproar, always quick to keep the peace, but Rose held firm, making sure she understood Derek's betrayals. Finally, the truth prevailed. Derek's parents and siblings chose to believe me, cutting him off financially and emotionally. They had supported him for too long, enabling his gambling without realizing it. Professionally, Derek was placed on indefinite leave pending an investigation into the company accounts he managed. I knew it was only a matter of time before they uncovered irregularities that would cost him his job. Weeks passed, and the initial frenzy finally calmed. Derek kept attempting to call me, leaving pleading voicemails asking me to come back. He desperately promised to pay me back every cent, but I refused to engage. That chapter of my life was over. The man I once loved was gone, consumed by his addiction. I had broken free, and nothing could make me waste a second more on Derek and his pathetic drama. Ironically, while Derek's world collapsed, my new life was just beginning. I flourished in my job and embraced my independence. I rented out my spare bedroom to a friendly nurse from work and spent weekends exploring my new town. For the first time in years, I could breathe freely, making my own choices without criticism or judgment. I reconnected with old friends who energized me. Joy and laughter filled my days again. 2 months after I left, Rose called with the final, inevitable news. Derek had been fired for embezzling company funds. Just another means to fuel his addiction, I thought bitterly. His lies had finally caught up to him. While part of me was sad for the man he used to be, I felt no regret. As they say, karma comes for us all eventually. Derek was finally facing the consequences of his deceit, and I was savoring my new life. Justice had been served. 6 months after I left Derek, life had never been better. I was thriving in my new job, nurturing new friendships, and relishing my independence. For the first time in years, I was genuinely happy, which is why I was shocked when Derek showed up at my door one Saturday morning, haggard and desperate. "Juliana, please, I need you," he begged as I stood in the doorway, stunned. "How did you find me?" I demanded. Derek's eyes were bloodshot, his clothes disheveled. He blinked, confused by my anger. "I talked to your sister," he mumbled. "But that's not important. Please, Juliana, just give me another chance." I crossed my arms coldly. "You must be delusional if you think I'd ever let you back in my life." Derek gripped my hands tightly. "I know I screwed up, but I can fix this. I got help. I'm going to meetings now. It'll be different this time, I promise." I wrenched my hands from his grasp. "I don't believe a word you say. How can I ever trust anything you promise me?" Derek's shoulders slumped in defeat. "Please, I'm begging you. I've lost everything. My job, my family, our home. You're all I have left." For a moment, as I saw the broken man before me, my anger softened. But just as quickly, it reignited. I had given him too many chances before. No more. "I'm sorry, Derek, but I've worked too hard to rebuild what your lies destroyed. I have a good life here now." Desperate tears welled up in Derek's eyes. "You can't just abandon me," he cried. "I stood by you in sickness and health." An icy calm settled over me. "Yes, I once promised you those things," I said evenly, "but you broke your vows to me long ago. I've chosen myself this time. Please don't come here again." I stepped back and firmly shut the door, my hands trembling slightly. His surprise ambush had shaken me, but I refused to let it derail all my progress. My roommate Sarah reassured me that night. "You did the right thing. He doesn't deserve your sympathy after how he treated you." She was right. Derek was simply reaping what he had sown, and I could not allow his toxicity back in my life, no matter how broken he seemed. Over the next few weeks, Derek still tried calling daily, begging me to give him another chance. I simply blocked his number, refusing to engage. Eventually the calls stopped. I hoped Derek had finally accepted his fate and chosen to improve his life, but I would never know. That life was behind me now, no more looking back. My destiny was here in my new home, full of possibility and freedom. Derek's choices had led him to a different path, one only he could alter. I wished him well, but my future happiness could not hinge on his. Justice had been served, and I had been delivered. A year after I left Derek, I was nearly unrecognizable from the timid, isolated woman I had been. I flourished in my new city, nurturing a community of supportive friends and excelling in my nursing career. I even began dating a kind, principled man named Liam, who restored my faith in true partnerships. On the anniversary of my liberation, I took stock of the monumental changes in my life. No more constantly suppressing my needs to pacify Derek's ego. No more tiptoeing around his moods and unpredictable rage. That chronic anxiety that once defined me had lifted, freeing me to fully be myself. In my new home, I was energized, confident, and bold. qualities Derek had gradually dimmed in me over the years through his callous disregard. But letting go of his disrespect had reignited my spirit and strength. Of course, starting over hadn't always been easy. Derek's sudden ambush had shaken me, triggering old doubts and insecurities. I had to actively resist those lingering dark voices telling me I owed him another chance. But true freedom, I learned, came not from another person finally getting it or making amends. It came from within, from knowing my worth and refusing to accept anything less ever again. I still got occasional updates from Rose about Derek picking up menial jobs and getting evicted from his apartment after falling behind on rent. It's like he wants to self-destruct, she said sadly. But I set firm boundaries with my family, making clear I could not carry Derek's damage anymore. Sympathy would only impede my healing. His choices were his own now. As I reflected on my first year alone, a profound sense of pride bubbled up. Pride at my courage in the face of uncertainty. Pride in forging ahead through doubt, fear, and grief. Pride at illuminating the truth and forcing consequences, even as my heart ached. I had broken the cycle, something no one else could do for me, and my life was forever changed for it. Now when I came home each day to my little apartment, I felt true peace. No more walking on eggshells, constantly managing Derek's mercurial moods. This space was my sanctuary. Sitting on my patio amidst the tranquility of twilight, I knew with certainty I had reclaimed my life, and I cradled that hard-won knowledge like the precious gift it was. Whatever Derek's path held, I wished him growth, but I refused to be entangled in the darkness of his choices. My eyes now gazed firmly ahead into the light, focused on the possibilities stretching out before me. Though the journey had been long and wearying at times, I had made it through to the other side, and the view was breathtaking. Justice had been done. My future had arrived.